She was a vision of ice and fire, every movement calculated, every glance electric. But behind those sharp cheekbones and steel blue eyes, something was unraveling. Faye Dunaway, the woman who defined elegance and danger in one frame, was living a story that even Hollywood wouldn't dare to script. She conquered the screen with poise that made directors surrender. Yet her private life became a battlefield of ambition, perfection, and loss. What happened to the actress who once ruled the 70s? And why did the same perfection that made her a legend end up isolating her from everyone who loved her? Stay with this story, because behind the Oscar, behind Bonnie and Clyde and Network, lies a truth Faye never wanted the spotlight to see. She was born Dorothy Faye Dunaway on January 14, 1941, in Bascom, Florida. Her father was an Army sergeant, her mother a homemaker who taught her to hold herself with quiet pride no matter how small their town felt. Moving from base to base, the young Faye learned early what instability meant. She watched her mother smooth her hair before every church outing, pretending everything was fine, even when bills stacked up. That mask of composure, the art of performing life, would later become Faye's survival tool. She spoke little of her childhood, except to say that it made her hungry. Hungry to be noticed, hungry to control her own destiny. By her early 20s, that hunger took her to Boston University, where she studied theater before joining the American National Theater and Academy. She was disciplined, intimidatingly so even then. Classmates remembered her showing up hours early to rehearse scenes alone. She told a friend, "If I'm not perfect, I'm invisible." It wasn't bravado, it was prophecy. Her talent was undeniable, but what caught people's attention was her ability to vanish into elegance. She could play vulnerability without weakness, beauty without vanity. That paradox drew Elia Kazan, the same director who once discovered Brando. He cast her in Hogan's Goat on Broadway in 1965, and suddenly critics were using words like ferocious and magnetic. Hollywood took notice. The film world of the mid-60s was shifting. The old studio system was dying, and America was craving new faces, new rebellion. Enter Bonnie and Clyde. When Warren Beatty saw Dunaway's audition tape, he reportedly said, "She's got danger in her eyes." The role of Bonnie Parker made her an instant sensation. The beret, the pistol, the fatal grin. It was the image of an outlaw and a woman reborn in one frame. The film redefined violence, sex, and anti-heroism for American cinema, and Faye became its haunting emblem. Yet behind the glamour, she felt an invisible pressure building. Beatty, who produced the film, was both a mentor and a rival. Their creative friction, part admiration, part power struggle, set the tone for the rest of her career. She was 26, a star overnight, but the adulation came with whispers. Reporters called her cold, calculating, difficult. She called herself focused. That difference in language would follow her for decades. The image promised freedom. The life demanded control. The 1970s belonged to her. In the Thomas Crown Affair, 1968, she matched Steve McQueen move for move, the only woman who seemed capable of outsmarting him on screen. In Chinatown, 1974, she became Evelyn Mulray, the woman with a secret too painful to tell. Roman Polanski directed her with relentless precision. Their clashes became Hollywood legend. Crew members described long nights of shouting, take after take, Dunaway refusing to surrender to Polanski's vision until it felt psychologically real. According to one account, she threw coffee in his face during an argument about lighting. Years later, she dismissed it as exaggeration, but she never denied the tension. "I was protecting Evelyn," she said. The fight for control, of performance, of image, was never about ego for her. It was about survival in an industry that punished women for imperfection. By the time she starred in Network 1976, her precision had turned into something hypnotic. As Diana Christensen, the ruthless TV executive who confuses manipulation with affection, she delivered one of the sharpest performances of the decade. The role earned her an Academy Award, but the triumph felt hollow. "I became her," she later admitted, "and I didn't like who she was." The applause thundered, but inside she was collapsing under the same machinery her character represented. Success was no longer thrilling. It was mandatory. Every magazine cover, every press junket became a test she had to win. How long can a person live as their own performance? Her personal relationships suffered under that weight. Faye was drawn to men who matched her intensity. Actors, producers, creative giants who reflected her ambition. Among them was fashion photographer Terry O'Neill, who saw through the armor. They met in the early 70s. He photographed her sitting by the Beverly Hills Hotel pool the morning after her Oscar win. The statuette on the table beside her, the world at her feet, exhaustion in her eyes. It became one of the most iconic Hollywood portraits ever taken, an image of victory laced with melancholy. They married in 1983 and adopted a son, Liam, whom Faye initially claimed was her biological child, reportedly to protect his privacy. That decision sparked decades of speculation and tabloid rumors, something she rarely addressed publicly. "It was my private life," she said quietly once, and that's something this business doesn't respect. The cracks widened in the 1980s. After the triumph of network, the roles offered to her were either softened or punishing caricatures. She rejected most, searching for scripts that challenged her intellect. Then came Mommy Dearest, 1981. Based on Christina Crawford's memoir about her mother Joan, the film was meant to be an intense psychological study of fame and abuse. But when it reached theaters, audiences laughed at the wrong moments. The performance that Faye approached with Shakespearean rigor became a cultural punchline. "No wire hangers!" turned into a camp slogan. The press declared her career over. For Faye, it was a private humiliation she never recovered from. "I didn't think it would define me," she said years later. But it did. She reportedly refused to discuss the film in interviews for decades. Friends said she felt betrayed. By the editing, by the marketing, by the audience itself. The irony was cruel. She was condemned for being too convincing. What happens to a woman whose greatest power becomes her prison? Faye withdrew. Through the mid-80s and 90s, she worked sporadically. In Barfly, 1987, opposite Mickey Rourke, and The Handmaid's Tale, 1990, trying to rebuild credibility. The old fire was still there, but Hollywood had moved on. The era of controlled mystique had given way to approachable charm. For a woman once called imperious, the transition was merciless. "They want me to be soft," she once said. "I don't do soft." Her perfectionism, once mistaken for brilliance, was now framed as arrogance. In truth, she was fighting against invisibility. According to some accounts, she became increasingly volatile on set. There were reports of outbursts, walkouts, and disputes over creative control. In 1994, she was replaced on a Broadway production of Sunset Boulevard after clashing with director Andrew Lloyd Webber, who claimed she couldn't handle the singing. Faye sued, alleging defamation, before settling privately. Each incident chipped away at her reputation, not as an actress, but as a collaborator. Yet even her critics admitted she was never lazy. "She was always chasing the perfect moment," one cinematographer said, and sometimes that chase destroyed her peace. As the years passed, the perfectionist armor hardened into isolation. Friends drifted, projects stalled, and interviews grew rare. When she did appear, sharp, elegant, slightly detached, there was always that hint of watchfulness, as if she expected the room to turn against her. Still, she never renounced her craft. "The camera," she once told a journalist, "is the only thing that never lies to me." It was the one relationship that never abandoned her. In the 2000s, she accepted roles in independent films and made sporadic television appearances. But the fire had cooled into something gentler. She began attending retrospectives, acknowledging the passage of time, cautiously embracing her legacy. At the 2017 Oscars, when she famously announced the wrong Best Picture winner alongside Warren Beatty, the moment went viral. Viewers saw an awkward blunder. She saw poetic symmetry. Two icons from Bonnie and Clyde reunited under chaos. Hollywood's circle complete, she later said she felt embarrassed but not broken. "Mistakes happen," she shrugged. The kind of calm only decades of battle can teach. By then, she had already lived through the full cycle of fame, discovery, adoration, ridicule, and rediscovery. She wrote in her memoir Looking for Gatsby that her pursuit of excellence came from fear. The fear of fading, of being ordinary. The need for control, she confessed, is a way to keep the pain from showing. For someone who embodied so many kinds of women on screen, rebel, mistress, manipulator, victim, she never stopped fighting the contradictions inside herself. Maybe that's why her performances still hold up today. They weren't mere characters, they were negotiations between who she was and who she refused to become. In private, she reportedly found peace through spirituality and time with her son. The world rarely saw her, but when it did, the old charisma was intact, tempered by humility. Directors who worked with her later in life described her as softer, wiser, almost shy. Gone was the need to dominate every frame. What remained was the grace of someone who had finally stopped apologizing for caring too much. Looking back, her story reads like a Hollywood allegory, the dream that devours its dreamer. She rose at a time when actresses were told to be beautiful but not intimidating, emotional but not unstable. Faye refused to choose. She wanted to be all of it, and the world punished her for that audacity. Yet she also helped redefine what female power looked like on screen. Not just seduction or sweetness, but precision, intellect, danger. The line from Dunaway to later icons, Glenn Close, Nicole Kidman, Cate Blanchett, is unmistakable. Each owes something to her willingness to walk the tightrope between brilliance and breakdown. So what do we make of her now? The legend who wouldn't soften. The perfectionist who paid for excellence with isolation. The woman who taught Hollywood that beauty without complexity is meaningless. In the end, Faye Dunaway didn't disappear. She simply stepped off the stage she built, letting her work speak louder than the noise. Watch Chinatown again and you'll see it. The haunted eyes, the poised defiance, the fleeting tremor that betrays the human cost of control. That's not just Evelyn Mulwray. That's Faye, whispering through the decades. I was here. I mattered. I gave everything I had, and maybe that's why her story still matters now, because behind every legend lies a human being fighting to stay whole, while the world demands perfection. Faye Dunaway's tragedy wasn't that she fell, it's that she never stopped climbing, even when the summit disappeared into clouds. If stories like this remind you that the golden age of Hollywood was as fragile as it was glamorous, stay with us. There are more truths waiting where the lights fade and the legends still breathe.